Welcome to Ragnar Rider's Shop Talk, the ultimate pit stop for all things two-wheeled and roaring. We are mostly ordinary guys who live and breathe the motorcycle lifestyle. From our personal journeys to gripping product and accessory reviews, bike builds that redefine the road, the latest industry buzz, and a sneak peek into our future travels, consider this your front row seat to our motorcycling odyssey. So kick back, relax, and let the engines roar as we dive deep into the world of chrome, leather, and the sweet symphony of the open highway. Welcome to Ragnar Rider's Shop Talk, where the rubber meets the road and the stories unfold in the wind.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be for you. Welcome back to Ragnar Rider's Shop Talk. I'm your host, DJ Seeley. In the studio today, got Randall Boren and Big John Woody. And we're glad you tuned in on this dreary day. I truly hope that your riding weather is much better than ours, because frankly, the past few weeks for us has sucked. Randy, when was the last time you rode your bike? Don't lie.
2 days ago. I laid down about 10 miles.
Okay. John?
Sundays 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks? I got to be at least 2, maybe 3. It's killing me. But
a good ride, much like way back in December.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh yeah,
so.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Last week we had frozen roads and snow, and this week it's torrential rain, and it's just terrible. We've got Daytona coming up in a few weeks. I know Randy and I are going to try and make it down there, and I hope I remember how to ride when the time comes.
Yeah, you said something the other day about was I just going to wait until March and learn how to ride the bike?
Relearn how to ride, right?
Ride, so
lean.
That's right. That's right. Don't turn it. Yeah, that should be interesting. You know, I in a lot of forums on Facebook and social media. And, all the northerners are like, I'm putting mine to bed for, the winter and winter rising and, riding season is over. And most all of us in the South, is like, well, we ride all year round.
Yeah, we don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well,
so
much
for that.
Says, so
bet.
Hold my beer. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it has not been riding weather. But, hey, I did crank the bikes up in the garage the other day, and 2 things that I learned. One, they still sound fantastic. All right, they still deliciousness when you crank them up. But you need to open the door. Okay, that's just the fumes were just almost unbearable. And I only did it for just a minute to let the oil kind of move around. And I said, the next time I do that, I need to back it to the door, or roll it to the door.
So he doesn't know what we did during the last Christmas party that he threw. When we went out and cranked the
No,
bikes,
I remember. I smelt that for about 24 hours.
Yeah.
I think at some point I came out there.
Well, along those lines, after I had my last build done, John hadn't heard my bikes. Right. And came into town. We went down to the basement. I'm all giddy. I'm all showing off the bikes or whatever. I crank them up in the garage. It's about 20 degrees outside. And it was just going to be a minute, right? And we shut them off. We go back upstairs. We hang out a little while. He leaves. And about 2 o'clock in the morning is when the carbon monoxide detector started screaming. Yeah, Allison was not too happy with me at all.
Yeah, that stuff hangs around. So I hear we're going to talk about cams again.
Yeah, so we got a little feedback on our first episode. Appreciate that. A couple people wanted us to kind of elaborate and expound on what we had started talking about there, about the differences in riding a cammed bike, one, and then the horsepower cam versus the torque cam, if there were differences in this torque cam versus that torque cam. And, I went back, listened to the podcast, and they were right. We touched on it, but I didn't feel like we really gave it justice in discussing what those differences were to us and what a rider, looking at these different cams and trying to decide which one they might get. I really didn't feel like I gave them the information that they needed to know. We touched on it,
right?
But I really just wanted to dive in a little deeper on that.
I think everything was kind of superficial last time.
Yeah.
Getting started, kicking this thing off, and we wanted to touch base on, I guess, numerous topics of cams, but I like the idea of kind of digging into some specifics.
Yeah.
You know, you and I talked about it, and I think John feels the same way based on conversations we've had. We wish somebody would have done that with us, you know, before you had yours done, before I had mine done. And then since then, you know, we've kind of, okay, let's back up a little bit before we proceed any more on all of our bikes, and let's learn something first. And I think we did, and it helped us. I will tell you something that I learned. So I was saying Cyclorama 482 in my Road Glide, which is what I did. Great cam, love it. But I learned that it's not the 482. And here's why I thought it was the 482, because when I found my paperwork, it said 480, which is originally what I thought I had. But when I went to their website, the price that I paid was listed on the 482. So I contacted Cyclorama and I said, hey, you know, this is what my paperwork says that I bought. Gave them the part number. I said, but it looks like I've got the 482. Can you clarify? She says, no, you have the original 480. She said, we were phasing them out about the time that you bought yours, and the 480 MT took its place.
Okay.
So anybody know what the MT stands for? Monster torque.
All right.
So when we get into this, that'll be one of the avenues we'll go down. So I have the 480, which is the original, which was a good torque cam, which I didn't know for sure, but she said it also brought on good horsepower. But the 480 MT, had I've known this prior, I may have considered it for the limited, because it's a monster torque. That's what they're calling it. So and it's specific for baggers, touring bikes, two-ups, things of that nature.
Sure. So, John, what you started off in your ultra limited bone stock, right?
Yeah. When I bought it, it was bone stock.
Okay.
So, you know, I guess I'll kind of dive off in a little bit of that, you know, and it's probably a story that most people deal with. You know, I was a previous Harley owner, had an old Dyna Wide Glide years ago, and when I got back into riding, of course, Mama wanted to step up something more comfortable for her instead of that little B seat on the back of the Wide Glide. She had a 2-hour limit on, which is about gas station stop limit. But anyhow, so it was a bone stock, ultra limited, 19. And because of the old days, of course, I was carbureted back then. In my mind, I knew I at least wanted to go stage one. I wanted to get some pipes. I wanted some sound, especially with these M8s. I was hearing them crank up. It didn't have the old twin cam sound. So I was like, I got to have some sound. So if I'm going to do the pipes, then I might as well do the breather and the stage one. So I went with the Pro Steak tuner. And with the pipes that I went with, I didn't do the head pipe. I ran into some issues after the first 200 or 300 miles. Something was off with my tune. Noticed that it was kind of having some issues with the EHTMS LMNOP module. It just wasn't running right. As I was getting into my RPM range, didn't feel the power that I felt like I should be getting out of the M8. So I went back to my local dealer. We kind of talked about it. They did some testing on it, tried some different pushes on the tuner, and after several weeks of going back and forth, Harley's answer was, let's throw a cam in it and see what it does. Well, of course, I was giddy with that, right? I mean, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Well, who wouldn't be, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we kind of worked out some agreements, and at that point, I had to make a decision. Now, because they're the ones suggesting this, you know, I was kind of being tracked down the road of Screaming Eagle, and which at that point, it really wasn't that big of a deal for me. I was thinking, hey, I'm kind of getting a deal out of this, and so at that point, I really, everything that I read on the M8 was that the performance is there. It's way more than the twin cam. So I was thinking, you know, really at that point, I want that twin cam load. I said, well, you're going to get that more out of the horsepower cam than you are the torque. So I said, well, let's ride with it. And so they did some adjustments. All my problems went away. Then a whole nother discussion about the EHTMS system. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that acronym right, but
LMNOP.
Yeah, LMNOP. There you go. But that's kind of where I was, and it was a game changer for me. I mean, because I was like, hey, this is what a Harley's supposed to ride like. I mean, I was very kind of disappointed in just the stock M8, to be honest with you. And so I started riding it with the horsepower cam. Now, granted, the RPM range was a little higher, but what I read at the time, I thought, well, maybe that's the M8 portion. But I learned how to ride it. I learned how to stay in the RPM range course, then that evolved to later on some other issues with some modifications that I wanted to do that involved the head pipe. That heat, man, just after that first trip to Daytona, feeling that heat coming off that cat, and some brake line issues, but that's another whole topic. But anyhow, got with our buddy from Reinhardt Racing and put a head pipe on it. But everything else is, and put a new air cleaner on it, but I still have the Pro Steep tuner, and the bike's running great. It's a higher RPM range, and we can get into kind of comparison if you want to talk about y'all's experience between the torque. It's very similar. I've ridden your S&S 475. Obviously it has a lot more punch than mine does, but it's still similar RPM range, same riding style, and I mean it was easy to jump on yours and feel comfortable.
Do you think it does though? I mean, I've not ridden yours, but I've talked to our mechanic that did our builds, and I didn't really consider the Harley cams. Well, I don't have a good reason for it other than they weren't the new shiny thing, right? But he assures me that, hey man, don't knock them till you try them. Like,
Yeah.
they're there. Do you feel like there was that big of a difference? Like, I know you've told me that, but you just trying to make me feel good.
Well, and there's a lot of other videos out there on podcasts right now and vlogs that kind of talk about this. Let me go ahead and give this disclaimer. Obviously, I've got the Tour Pack on mine. There's a little bit of extra weight than your Road Glide. So, a few factors there, but I think I could feel the difference. But there's also some caveats to that. You did some extra mods that I didn't do that I think contribute. Now, I do have the intake. I upgraded the intake after melting mine last trip to Daytona. But I don't know how much those contribute to 1, 2, 3 horsepower here or there. Here's a sticker, adds 3 more horsepower. I don't know. I don't know.
And I don't either. We talked about that an episode or two ago. But I went in and accumulated all these parts and piled them up, and we went in, did one build. We did throttle body and injectors and plugs and wires and all the things. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's hard to pull one apart and say, well, how much did the throttle body add? How much are you getting from those injectors? What's this tuner doing versus that tuner? I don't know all those differences.
Seat of the pants, to your original question, my seat of the pants meter, just sure enough, sitting in the bike, ripping on the throttle. Honestly, on your 475 at about 4,500 RPMs, I feel just an extra kick.
Okay.
Other than that, around 2,800 to 4,500, very similar. But when you really wrap down on it at about 4,500 RPMs, there's an extra oomph.
Well, and that's the difference I feel with the 475 over my Woods 22XE in my Limited too. What about Ron's? He's got the torque cam, right?
He does.
You've ridden his.
I have not.
You haven't? Okay.
But he loves it.
Yeah.
And it's noticeable when we're online pulling off. Yeah, he takes me. And other than the fairing, it's bike for bike, from mine to his. So
yeah. So one of the things you mentioned that I think we need to kind of sit and dwell on was, you said, I learned how to ride. I learned how to stay in the RPM range that it likes. And that was my biggest takeaway between my 2 cams after putting them in, after riding, was those cams have got a sweet spot that they like to be in, that they like to cruise at, and that the power comes in at. And I'd say that's what I want to drive home to everybody. When you're picking these cams, don't assume that it's one is right and one is wrong. It's not. There's differences.
Right.
And I'm sure your 480's the same way. Yep. And the 3030, they probably got a sweet spot they like to be in. And it's not that one's necessarily better or than this one. They're just different.
It is. I think it's and we did discuss this a little bit last time. Again, not quite as deep. It is important that, and I've said this, if I said it once, I guess I said it 10 times over the last, or the first 2 or 3 episodes, was that do your due diligence and make sure that, and listen to us. We're amateurs. Our disclaimer is that we're not professional technicians. We're not certified in anything. We just talk about it. We've learned a lot from our experiences. And we wished we had somebody sharing this when we were going through it. So that's what we want to do. But when you get past our level, there's other people that can take it to the next level, should you desire to know more. Learning how to ride your bike with the setup that it has, whether it's stock, whether it's cammed, whether you've got a new head pipe, whether you've got throttle body, because I could tell a difference because I had my Road Glide cammed from April until December, difference in the Limited. I rode both quite a bit during that time. And I could tell performance, not just necessarily cam-wise, but even performance-wise. And you say, okay, specifically what is that? Well, some of it was throttle response from the aspect of how much fuel that it will allow and oil flow that it would allow, because once you get on it, all that stuff opens up and it's got to flow freely if you're going to get out of it what it's meant to do. I could tell that some of that stuff was better. The cam brought its own nice, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Its own nice take on the motor. But all of the other things, like you said, okay, I've got an oil pump, I've got, the injectors, I've got the ECM that we put in brings in the wide body, what do they call it?
Wide pan O2.
Right, exactly. So, there are some aspects, those things I could tell. Build the Limited, get on it after it's kind of set in for a little bit, and now I'm saying, okay, now I've got it in this one. And I can feel, as you said, seat time, John, and I can feel and hear some of those differences.
Yeah.
But they do make a difference in whatever I said. And I know we talked about your bike the last time we were doing, or I think in the last episode actually, that you did the cam, the head pipe, you done the throttle body. Is that what you did?
The intake.
Recently, the intake. So, but you haven't done the throttle body. You haven't done the injectors. And you haven't.
Mine's basically, other than my breather, it's basically a stage 2 Harley.
Traditional stage 2.
The head pipe and the breather is an upgrade.
So I would be curious, like extremely curious, as to what difference you would notice if you did those things. So oil pump, cam plate, I don't think, but the oil pump, throttle body, injectors. I would be curious to see what seat time felt for you at that point.
And obviously living vicariously through y'all, that has crossed my mind. Obviously, I was leading down a trail with Harley, with Mother Harley, trying to get my bike running right. That kind of led me to where I was, and I've been happy with it. And I think that's a message for y'all as viewers listening, is that there's all kinds of options out there. You can do aftermarket builds. There's Screaming Eagle parts and builds that you can do that still will meet the needs of average riders. But the regret that I had, and it's to make y'all's point that y'all made in the previous episode, is that I was kind of funneling down a road where I really didn't have time, because of everything that was going on, I just wanted my bike running right.
Yeah. And you were down, and you got this bike that's what, months old.
Yeah.
And you can't ride it. It's in the shop. You're getting this from one mechanic and this from another mechanic.
And I was in that.
And you're just like, hey, I don't care what y'all do. Fix my bike. Put it back in my garage. If that means this cam, then let's do it.
Yeah. And so I got led down the HD trail, and it meets my needs as a rider. Don't get me wrong, listeners. It meets my needs. Is it what they've done in their builds? No, but it seriously meets mine and my wife's needs of what we do if we go out for a Sunday night ride.
But if you had, and I don't want to go so cliche as to say if you had it to do over again, but let's say you bought another bike, that you bought another bike with all of the knowledge that you now have. Because I did this on the Limited. The Road Glide, I was in somewhat the same shoes, but at the same time, a little bit advanced. So I bought the cam because I knew which cam I wanted. And then I think a couple of things, everything else, I just told my mechanic at the dealer, I told Josh, I said, just bring it out of your parts and just put it on. No regrets, it meets the need. But then on the Limited, you went through yours, I went through mine. He was buying parts for his, and I was like, and he had done his too, and I'm like, no, I'm just going to take my time, and I'm going to buy everything up because I'm going to be in there. I want a little over exaggeration here, but every bolt, washer, nut, everything replaced. If I'm in there, I just want to do it all.
Yeah, I think ideally, hindsight being 2020, yes. Do I kind of envy the process y'all went through? Absolutely. But I think, I think we kind of need to make this point is that you need to make a decision as you're kind of going which route you're going. And because, you kind of hung up, if you're looking at warranty, you're hung up on the Screaming Eagle tuner. I mean, you can read all the fine print, listen to all, but that's the consistent message from Harley Davidson.
Right.
So, kind of going to some of those extra steps that have an extreme amount of value. If you listen to Laidlaw's the other day with his head mechanic, his bike, he talks about, he's like, but I can build my own bike. I can do my own stuff, so I'm not worried about it. But, if you want to stay in the warranty environment, you kind of got to go the route that I was led down. And I don't really regret it.
Sure.
Do I have a little bit envious to what y'all done? Yeah, but I mean, it's, as we sit around having cold drinks, it's fun to talk about, right?
Sure.
So, but, if that is something that you're concerned about, then you got to kind of at least stay with the Screaming Eagle Pro Tuner. A lot of these aftermarket parts, that Screaming Eagle Pro Tuners, it has limitations, and your dyno guys don't want to touch it. So
I think that's a good statement right there. And I know we're not going to specifically stay on tuners today, but I do want to say that I have heard that a lot of the dyno guys don't like. But I've also heard a lot of guys say that unless you're performance tuning the bike to something that the average rider is not going to be doing, that the Screaming Eagle Pro Street meets the need of your average Joe out here, which is kind of what we're geared towards. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you did yours and you started buying the parts, and that kind of made me jealous because I didn't do that on the Road Glide, but I did it on the Limited after you did because it made sense.
Let me get
what was the purpose of that?
Let me go on record and say there was plenty of poking and prodding and encouragement from the two of us on the parts for you to purchase, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
If you needed help making a decision, lean on your riding buddies. They will help you make any decision that you need to make.
Let me just, let me say, listen to me. If you have riding buddies, they can spend your money better than you can all day long. Just know that for sure. These two, I mean, they sign checks better than anybody out there.
Right. If your riding buddies can't hook you up, we got you.
So if you need advice, call us. All you need to do is just give us the check. Promise you we can spend the money.
Yeah.
But back to that question, what happened that you said, okay, John did this, Randy did this, I like it, theirs sounds good, I want to do it this way. What kind of got that path?
Personality. It's a trait that the good Lord blessed me with that I just can't. I can't settle my mind sometimes.
It's a blessing and a cursing.
Turn. It's FOMO.
Yeah.
And like we've talked about, I'm a little meticulous about things. If I take it out, I've got that decision to make. Do I put it back in? Do I not put it back in? And I wasn't in a hurry. I would have mentioned this before, but don't jump on something. If you're in John's shoes and you're down without a bike, and you can't ride, and you've got to make a decision, then by all means just make the decision. But if this is something you can plan out, I would encourage you to do that. Plan it out. We've got, like we've talked, there's really two base camps: your horsepower cam and your torque cam. John mentioned that all you got to do is figure out how to ride the bikes. You're just going to ride the bikes slightly differently.
So what does that mean? Describe that. What range is it different?
So one thing for me that I've noticed, I get on the Road Glide, 475 horsepower cam. It likes to rev. Slow speed maneuvers, I'm in first gear on it.
Yeah.
I'm jockeying the throttle a little more.
That's right.
We talked about that. Yeah. Versus my Limited, slow speed, slow turns, I can be in second on it and really need to be in second. First on it, and it's a little jumpy.
Yeah.
I don't get that out of the Road Glide. But you're riding those gears out a little longer with the horsepower cam, I feel like. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I got the opportunity to ride your Ultra Limited with the torque cam on some back roads, curvy roads, at kind of some slower speeds. And, what I noticed and took away from that was that, I was able to stay in that RPM range at those slower speeds. And at a higher gear, and I didn't find myself shifting quite as much. It just stayed in that power range through the curves, through the decelerations, through the accelerations, up the hills and whatnot. With the extra weight of the Ultra Limited, I really kind of grew an appreciation for the torque cam in that environment. Now, does that mean I can't ride the S&S 475 Road Glide or my Screaming Eagle horsepower cam on that same road and not still perform? Absolutely I can. I just have to keep the RPMs at a higher range.
Right. And I think it was the same thing with, and I think I told both of you, but I know I told DJ, I would have bet a lot of money. I would have lost, I know, but I would have bet a lot of money before I ever done a thing to either bike that there was a difference in the bikes. Not just the weight of the bike. I just felt like that there was a shifting difference, and everything that we dug into, we found that the 117s were cookie cutters. They were assembly line assembled motors. They were both exactly alike, et cetera, et cetera. But I swear to this day that the shifting and the RPM need for shifting was different. That being said, it definitely is now, with the two different cams. Right. And they both present, I'm going to say they both present their own challenges and fun at the same time. Learning them, if I get on the Road Glide and I get ready to take off, it wants to go. Now the Limited wants to go too, but I can creep around a little bit better on it, I think. But there's a difference in how they both react to the throttle and when. And I think it's important that everyone listening to us that's trying to make a decision that they know, again, back to what we said originally, what type of riding they want to do. 2 up, 1 up, all right, that's the first one. If they're majority 2 up, all right, then that eliminates a few, I think. And then if they're going to be weighted down, if they got a tour pack, some things of that nature, does it mean that you couldn't put any cam you wanted in that bike and it run well? No, that you can. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You put a horsepower, torque, whatever you want to put in there, but you have to ride it different. Yeah. So that's the fun of it.
That's the whole key.
The interesting thing is, and back to your question, me, if I had to do it all over again. Well, I kind of have the opportunity to with my Lowrider S.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That I bought as a fun bike for me, but also for my son to ride with us. But that's a different platform, so it's a lighter weight bike, with being a soft tail. And I've had these, angels and demons on my shoulder going back and forth. Okay, do I go the torque cam? Do I go more of a horsepower? Do I go a mid-range? Because it is a softer bike. And I'm having that conversation with myself right now. So who knows what the future holds? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, and I'd go as y'all roll with me here for just a minute.
Come on.
You sent me a text a few weeks ago of a flyer from one of the dealerships, a winter flyer offering a cam install. I think you had to have a stage 1 already. Yeah. So, we'll get into stages. Most everybody listening to this ought know what a stage 1 is, and most bikes have them, within 6 days of being purchased. So, you had to have a stage 1, and then they were putting in a cam. Now, it's a Harley cam.
Right, sure.
I'm sure you can take your pick. Torque or horsepower, they didn't care. And it was less than...
what was it?
$500.
I think it was $500.
I think it was $599.
Yeah.
I can tell you, if you have a stock bike and can spend $500, you will not regret it.
No, absolutely. I agree. You're right.
Yeah, and the thing about it is,
if you game changing.
Yeah, and if you don't know any better, when you get on the road after that, you're gonna be, yeah,
you're going to feel it.
This is good. Yeah. This is good.
You're going to love it.
Yep.
It's going to change the experience riding your bike. You're going to do it for a fraction of the cost. I don't know if your dealership is the same as that dealership. If you want to know which dealership it is, maybe shoot us an email or something. We may key you in on that. But I think that is a steal of a buy. And I don't think you'd give up anything measurable.
No, I don't. We've said this before, and you'll often hear us say we've said this before because the three of us have been talking for 2 years now on this stuff. So a lot of the things that we're talking on our podcasts about now, we have chewed up and spit out many times. But it's all about knowing that your motor is as close as it's ever going to be to perfect when you ride it out of the dealer. I mean, that's how they build it. For all of their, regulations and things they have to meet EPA-wise or whatever it may be. So anything you do to it there afterwards is only going to, its performance, and it's only going to make it be better. And I say better from the aspect of sound and performance, but just always know that when you do one thing, usually there's something else on the heels of that that's now going to need to be done. So if I do a cam, I'm going to sometime I'm going to need to do a head pipe, most likely. Could you get away with not doing it at all? I believe you could, just like you said. That's $500 is a heck of a deal. Mm-hmm. And you walk out the door and hop on that bike, you're going to notice the difference. You're going to hear the sound. It's going to be great. But then you're going to run across somebody that did the same thing, that put a head pipe on or put new slip-ons on, and then had it tuned, and it just. Just be prepared. Is what
it is.
I'm trying to say.
And it's funny you say that because I did that, and then I changed after I did my cam. I upgraded the head pipe and upgraded to a higher performance intake. I'm gonna tell you, seat of the pants. Mm-hmm. That was just as much of an improvement as the cam was.
Yep. I agree.
And of course they had to readjust the tune and everything, but that seat of the pants, that was just as much of an improvement as the cam was. Yeah. It was a big difference.
I agree. I think most everything, if you put on a tail light, I think you noticed it. We like to fun about that.
Right? Yeah.
That's right, exactly. What was that picture I sent you the other day that said that this sticker added 3 or 4 more horsepower to the bike? But seriously, I mean, anything you do from a mechanical perspective to the motor, you're doing it for a reason. You've got a friend that's got bikes setting at one of our local dealers that's been there for, a couple of years now, and I'm not sure why they did what they did. They just sit there. They don't ever get ridden or anything, but most people.
One of them I know has got 15 miles on it, and it's just from the mechanic doing a test ride after he built it. After the guy bought it, it hasn't moved since. But
yeah. I mean, they may not have ever left the dealership.
I don't know.
I don't know. But my point is that some have money just to blow it and burn it, all right? But all of us and you guys listening or watching, if you're like us, when you spend that money, you want to make sure it's going somewhere for good use. So anytime you buy a part, whether it's across the Harley parts desk or online from JP Cycle or Thundermax or any of the cam places, you're improving your bike. Just make sure that in the end, it is getting you to where you want to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think ultimately, whether it's performance, cosmetic, there's so many things, and that's kind of the nostalgia of Harley-Davidson is the customization.
Sure.
Just ride your bike, develop a vision for your bike of what you want, and then do the research that supports that vision, because everybody's vision is going to be different.
That's right.
And no matter if it's cosmetic or performance, it's still the same theory.
I agree.
Yeah. I would say, just to wrap this up, if you've got your bike, you're considering a cam. That's next step for me. Look, if you're gonna park on a country road, you don't really like to shift, you're just tooling through, easy ride, I would lean you more towards a torque cam than a horsepower cam.
Would agree.
If you're more of a thrill seeker, you don't mind shifting through curves, you don't mind throttling the jockey a little more, running up in that 3,000, 3,500 RPM range, the thrill of engaging with the bike at that level is exciting to you, then I would push you more towards the horsepower cam.
But what if I want to do burnouts on the LRS?
Well, let's see. You want a BDL conversion kit with a
That's
chain
a whole
drive
other episode, guys.
and a belt drive on the primary. So yeah, we could talk about that. But $8,000.
Okay.
But from there, you've got a lot of choices, but I just don't know with any certainty that an average rider is going to be or have any regrets going from this one to that one to that one. And that was my fear when I was trying to pick my cams, was I don't want to make a mistake. Trust me. Put the cam in,
Yep.
You're not going to hate it.
No. I don't think that's anything that you could do to it from that perspective is going to be any kind of regret. I remember my first bike back into biking again was a 2011 Street Glide. Loved the little bike. Had a 96 on it and I never sold it before I got a chance to really do any motor builds. But I remember putting the slip-ons on. Vansenheim high outputs, and man, it just changed the sound of it. It just, no RPMs, didn't do any of that, but in acceleration, it changed the sound. And as far as I was concerned, I just bought a brand new bike, or I just had a whole built engine, the whole 9 yards, because every little bit you do allow it, and it's really a lot to give it a good description. If you've ever owned a 4-wheel drive, if you put that thing in 4 low, that's a torque cam. If you put it in 4 high, there's your horsepower count. I mean, if you're not for sure trying to give you an elementary description of it, it really is, your torque's going to allow you to not have as much pressure taken off from a red light or stop sign or a standstill. You're going to have the opportunity, if you got horsepower, it's going to give you some on that top end, for, as DJ said, that thrill seeker that wants to get out there and let it eat. And I have found myself somewhat in the middle. I like to go to rallies, so I'm clutching it a lot, going down Main Street, going down, to destination or to Sturgis or wherever it may be where there's a lot of bikes, and, we're just clutching it and riding it, and just, in the heat of the day or in the cool of the night, whatever it may be, to getting out on a long stretch of road and just absolutely burning some gallons of gas as quick as possible. So it's all about what you want.
So let me ask y'all this question, and I think this is a valid question for a certain percentage of our audience that maybe have come up through the twin cam or the old days of Harley and that sound. Mm-hmm. And we talk performance, but let's take a moment and talk about sound. That chop, mm-hmm. or potato. All right. Get just real quick as we wrap up. What is y'all's thoughts on cams versus just someone that's looking for the sound that just wants a little bit more beefy pep?
We talked about that.
Did y'all? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. We didn't go in depth, so it's a good question. But what we talked about is that early on, we talked about people pay good money to come up to a stop sign or a red light and sit there with people around you and it loping.
Oh yeah.
I mean, $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is, $500 if that's the cam you do. You're going to.
So do you feel like you get that a little bit more out of a horsepower or a high lift versus? And I know that's two different avenues right there, but where do you feel? Because I mean, like when you crank up your 475,
it's a different sound.
Yeah, I get a lot more lope out of the 480 than I do the 3030. Absolutely, it's if I did them side by side, you would sit there and listen and go, oh yeah, that's definitely a far more low.
But there's other factors that go into the tune that also affect that with the timing. I mean, but just cam for cam. I mean, not trying to muddy the waters too much.
Horsepower cam's definitely going to give you more chop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's when I made my decision, I'll be honest with you. I'll be transparent. They said, which one do you want? We can throw a torque cam or horsepower. The horsepower is going to have a little bit more lope to it. Okay. I mean, I'll be transparent. At the time when I had to make the decision, that was my deciding factor.
I will say that's marginal, though.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say the torque cam's still going to chop.
Yeah.
It's still going to potato, just not as much.
The 3030 offers me, so I built both of mine almost exactly alike at this stage. The stock compensator has been replaced on both. The clutch has been replaced on both. Throttle bodies, intake, breather, head pipes, and everything is almost exactly the same. The only thing that's really different, if I recall correctly, it's been a few days. If I recall correctly, the only thing that's different is the cam itself. Now, the Screaming Eagle oil pump and plate on one and S&S on the other, but there's no difference. They're high performance parts, so there's no difference there.
And don't change.
That's right. So the essence of what's only different is the Star 3030 and the CR 480. And listening to them sit there, there's a difference. No, it's not a great magnitude. It's not the difference between an earthquake and a tremor.
But there's a noticeable. That's an S475. It's got a.
The Ford,
It's noticeable.
It
I mean,
is.
you can be in a parking lot here at Bike Creek Up, and you're like, yeah, I think that's 475.
the cam world, and y'all welcome to disagree, but everything that I have researched, the 475 and the CR 483 are as close to each other as any of them are, and they both provide about the same amount of chop. And they're some of the two heaviest ones on the market.
So I had, I was quite torn on my Road Glide as to which cam I wanted. I knew I wanted the sound from the 475. It's very distinct. It's just recognized as one of the better sounding cams across the board. So that was one of my deciding factors. You know what the biggest deciding factor was? It was $202 on Fuel Moto. It was the least expensive
absolutely.
cam
It is, yeah.
I could find.
Yep.
Not that I was out searching for the least expensive one. Trust me, I spent plenty of money on the build. But when I looked at it in the S&S 475, it's got great reviews.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's highly favored in the industry, and it's $202. The closest competitor that I was considering was $350.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't think I'm going to get $150 worth of difference in the sound or the feel or the.
And you're getting what you wanted, so that helps.
Right.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I had the little voice saying 475, 475, 475.
Yeah.
And I just kept going back to it. I mean, you guys lived through that with me when I just never would pull the trigger, and I kept going back. I think I want the 475. I just think I want the 475. And then I get an email one day, Fuel Moto's got 475 on sale, $202.
Click.
It's signed.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Click. And I think outside of the Screaming Eagle, which is probably, I guess, one of the more populars, I don't know for sure. I haven't researched this, so don't take it to bank. I'm making a statement or a point here. Because it comes from Harley, and everybody that buys a bike, gets something done, whether it's the 500 or the 1,000 or whatever. But I think right beside that, or maybe even more, is the 475, the S&S. I mean, that's what
they're
I was
respected in the industry.
They are.
They've been around forever.
I was going that way the entire time before I built the Road Glide in April, until I did my research and came across the Cyclorama and what it did. And I'm telling you, the margin between the two of them was very thin. My deciding factor, everybody's got a 475.
Yeah.
I want something different.
Something different.
And so I did.
And it is.
Outside of that, I mean, that was really the only that swayed me.
Yeah, and it goes back, and I think y'all mentioned it. Going back and listening to the podcast. We've joked about throw 4 or 5 in a box and blindfold me, pick one out. I'm gonna be happy with whichever one.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna grow. You're gonna learn the RPM range. You're gonna feel the performance increase. It's
So like we said early on, just know what you want out of your bike. If you want torque, if you want horsepower, what that's going to bring you, and then once you put it in, man, learn how to perfect it, learn how to ride it. It is a process. It's not just jump on the bike and take off. If you care no more about it than that, you can keep it bone stock and just enjoy riding. And I envy those guys to some degree that can do that.
You've said that.
But if you're starving to get something out of it more than just the stock, then learn that throttle, learn that clutch, learn what your bike will do, and then do it to the best of its ability. I think it'll be fun.
Agreed.
Hey, if you decide you want to reach out to us on social media, it is RR Shop Talk on TikTok, RR.Shop Talk on Instagram, and Ragnar Riders Shop Talk on Facebook. And our email address is
rrshoptalk@gmail.com.
Enjoyed it. Looking forward to next time. May God bless you.